Imagine you're walking down the street and suddenly see footprints appearing out of nowhere. Sounds like something out of a mystery, right? Well, in today's story, Footprints Without Feet, we'll dive into the adventures of a scientist who discovered how to make himself invisible. But with great power comes great responsibility, or in this case, great chaos. Let's start at the beginning. Two boys in London notice something strange, muddy footprints appearing on the steps of a house. But there's no one around. They follow these footprints as they go. The boys have no idea they are chasing an invisible man. This mysterious man is Griffin, a brilliant scientist who figured out how to make his body invisible by experimenting with some very rare drugs. However, Griffin wasn't a very nice person. He was selfish and didn't care about others. In fact, he set his landlord's house on fire just because he didn't like him. To escape without being caught, Griffin had to remove all his clothes, which made him completely invisible, but also completely vulnerable, especially in the freezing winter of London. Griffin's troubles didn't end there. He sneaks into a big store to find warmth, and while he's there, he takes whatever he wants: clothes, food, and even wine. But he oversleeps and gets caught when the store workers arrive in the morning. In a panic, Griffin has to strip off his clothes again to escape, turning invisible, but once again left naked and cold. Realizing he can't stay in crowded London, Griffin decides to move to a quiet village called Iping. He disguises himself with bandages, dark glasses, and a fake nose to hide his invisible head. But you know, his strange appearance and secretive behavior make the villagers very suspicious. Mrs. Hall, the owner of the inn where Griffin is staying, tries to be friendly, but Griffin just wants to be left alone. He even tells her that an accident has disfigured his face to avoid questions. One night, something even stranger happens. A clergyman and his wife hear noises in their study and discover that their money is missing. But there's no one in the room. They can't figure out how this could happen, and neither can the villagers when they hear about it. The next morning, Mrs. Hall finds Griffin's room empty, even though his door was locked. She and her husband enter the room and suddenly, the furniture seems to come to life. A chair pushes them out of the room and Mrs. Hall is terrified, thinking the room is haunted. The villagers start to believe that Griffin is involved in witchcraft. Things take a dramatic turn when Griffin finally loses his temper. Mrs. Hall confronts him about the strange events, and Griffin shocks everyone by removing his bandages and revealing that he has no head. The village constable, Mr. Jaffers, arrives to arrest Griffin, but he's not prepared to deal with an invisible man. As Griffin removes more of his clothes, he becomes completely invisible again, and no one can catch him. In the end, Griffin escapes, leaving everyone in the village terrified and confused. So what can we learn from Griffin's story? Even though he was a brilliant scientist, his lack of morals and selfishness led to his downfall. This story reminds us that power without responsibility can be dangerous. What do you think? Would you want to be invisible like Griffin? What would you do with such a power?